One cold dreary winter day a friend and I decided to drive our jeeps out to the ghost town of Old Hachita in southwest New Mexico for a weekend of overland camping and exploring of old mine shafts. A light snow was falling that day and the skies were overcast as we arrived in Old Hachita. The temperature outside was around freezing. The plan was to explore the ghost town and surrounding mine shafts a bit before heading up over Broken Jug Pass to the Copper Dick mine where we were to spend the night. In Old Hachita, at the American mine, we found an entrance, a vertical shaft with a fairly solid wooden ladder sticking out, so we put on our headlamps, grabbed our ropes and rock hammers, and proceeded down the ladder. At each level of descent, was a wooden platform and another wooden ladder that led, maybe 30 feet down to the next level below. Each level had a horizontal tunnel going 2 different directions allowing the miners to follow the vein of ore. We would walk through each tunnel for several hundred feet, then return to the vertical shaft to descend to the next level. This particular shaft allowed us to go down about 7 levels, an estimated 200 feet from the surface. At that point, then the wooden cribbing, framework, and ladders were collapsed below us, and we could not go down any farther. Tossing rocks into the abyss, it appeared that the shaft may have gone down another 100 feet, but too dangerous to climb among the collapsed wooden beams to find out what was down there. At that point, we started climbing up each ladder to reach the surface. I was in the lead and when I reached the first level below the surface, I could hear what sounded like a faint meow, more like the cry of a small kitten. My first thoughts were that the noise was just the wooden beams creaking or the wind blowing through the tunnels and shafts of the mine. As I neared the surface, the cry became louder and louder. I climbed up the last rungs of the ladder and climbed onto the wooden platform at the surface. After a minute or so of letting my eyes adjust to the brightness of daylight, I see a movement in the corner of my eyes. I see a small gray tabby kitten standing maybe 20 feet away, looking at me. This little kitty couldn't have been any more than 2 months old. Because of the remoteness of the area, my first reaction was that it was a wild kitten, maybe bobcat, or something, but she was very friendly and came right up to me. I cannot imagine how this poor little animal even got out there all by herself. Most likely some heartless soul had a batch of kittens they didn't want and thought it was a good idea to dump them out there in the middle of nowhere in the dead of winter without food, shelter, or even their mother. We looked around for more kittens, but this little thing was the only one we found. It was getting dark by this time and still snowing, so we made the decision to set up camp at Old Hachita instead of driving the 10 miles to our originally planned location. Camping in an older Jeep CJ5 is a trick, especially for a 6'4" individual like me. I found that if I remove the front passenger seat, I was able to spread out my sleeping bag diagonally across the back with my feet under the passenger side of the dashboard. I could actually stretch out and was quite comfortable. The convertible soft top made a nice tent and being inside the Jeep, I was above the ground where bugs or critters couldn't get me. I had a small lantern that sat on one of the back fender wells and a small camp stove on the other. Doesn't sound too glamorous, but hey, it worked. I stayed warm and dry. I took the little kitten into my Jeep and wrapped it up in my sleeping bag and prepared to heat up a can of Dinty Moore beef stew on my camp stove. That was dinner, but I think the little kitty ate more than I did. Despite the continuing snowfall, we slept quite comfortably that night, keeping each other warm. The next morning, we woke up to about 2 feet of snow on the ground and a clear blue sky. As the sun rose over the Hachita Valley, we built a campfire to boil some water for coffee and to warm up some milk for the kitty. Probably the best cup of coffee I ever had. Coming out of the mountains to head home was a chore in itself, cutting through at least a foot of fresh snow before getting to the highway, but the Jeep did its job and got us through. By the time we got to the paved highway, the snow was mostly melted. The rest of the day was mostly eventless as we made our way home. As far as the little kitten goes, I decided to give her the name of Hachita and took her home to become our family pet, living a long and comfortable life.